Of course, one of the ladies served the minister first. "I'm not quite sure what kind of pie this is," she said apologetically. "It looks like custard, but the crust is on top." "Is that the pie you baked?" June asked Emily. Emily nodded. "Well, well," said Mr. Bonnet, in a voice that reached the multitudes in the church basement. "So this little lady baked the pie." Emily squirmed on the hard bench. Everyone turned to look at the little lady who baked the pies. The minister looked around at the people at his table. Then he looked at the pies. "Wait a minute," he said. "There are 12 pieces of pie and 20 people at the table. There isn't enough to go around." He picked up a knife and cut each piece of pie into 2 pieces. "There now, that's more like it," he said. "Enough to go around and second helpings for some. Like the loaves and the fishes, eh, Emily?" He laughed heartily at his own joke. Feeding the multitudes her custard pie was the last thing Emily wanted to do. Since she had baked it, she felt duty-bound to take a piece too, even though she did not care much for anything as slippery feeling as custard pie. What would people think if she was not willing to eat her own pie? "It's awfully funny custard pie," remarked June. Then Emily had an inspiration. "It is called upside-down pie," she said. "Upside-down cake. Why not upside-down pie? Let people think the crust was supposed to be on the top." The minister ate a mouthful of pie. "Delicious," he pronounced it. "The crust is light and flaky." Everyone at the table murmured in agreement. Emily's pie crust was light and flaky. They said exactly what Emily had planned they should say, before her crust had risen through the custard. "You know," he remarked, one of the ladies thoughtfully, "having the crust on top is an excellent idea for custard pie. So often the crust on the bottom becomes soggy. Tell me, Emily, what is the secret of such a light, flaky crust?" Emily smiled modestly. "I added a generous pinch of baking powder," she said. Chapter 8. The Hard Times Party. Mama was heartsick. Just heartsick when Daddy told her how little money he would get for his crops this year. The barn was full. The sheep grew long, thick wool. The hogs were fat. And what happened? The price of everything went way down. And all Daddy's hard work earned scarcely enough money to see the Bartletts through the next year. To Emily, this meant half-soled shoes, dresses that would have to be let down a second time, practical Christmas presents. That would be the worst part. Practical Christmas presents. "Mama, what will we do?" Emily asked anxiously. "We'll manage something," Mama answered with a sad smile. "We always do. Just remember our pioneer ancestors. Their first winter in Oregon was so hard, some of them had to make clothes out of the tops of their covered wagons." Emily felt better. Twice let-down dresses were better than clothes made out of covered wagon tops, which must have been stiff and scratchy. Times were hard for Grandpa, too. Farmers who had charged their shoes and overalls and sugar and spices often could not pay all their bills when their crops were sold. Yes, everybody in Pitchfork had to scrimp and pinch. And Emily knew there would be little money to give to the library that winter. What she did not expect, however, was that in a year when people had no money for the picture show or for gasoline to go riding around in their automobiles, they came to the library. During that hard winter, there often were not enough books to go around. The state library sent 3 crates at a time instead of 1, but still no Black Beauty. Mama checked books in and checked them right out again. One raw, rainy afternoon, Emily was so afraid there would not be any books left for the boy with a white flour sack. She selected a book for him and one for his little sister and hid them until he arrived, cold and wet from his long walk down the railroad track. And what did the ladies of Pitchfork do about the library? They decided to have a party. A Hard Times party in the Masonic Hall. They would charge 25 cents admission, proceeds to go to the library. Aren't hard times a funny thing to have a party about? Emily asked. Parties were for birthdays and Valentine's and Halloween, happy occasions. Mama smiled. Perhaps it is, but I think it is a nice idea. It is better to have some fun out of life as we go along than to feel sorry for ourselves. Emily wanted to have some fun out of life as she went along too. She wanted a chance to wear her best winter dress, the red taffeta with the gathered skirt that Grandma made for her last year. Mama, could I go to the party this once? She asked. Usually when Mama and Daddy went out in the evening, Emily spent the night with Grandma and Grandpa in their room upstairs over the store. She loved Saturday night in Grandpa's store because that was the night the loggers came to town. The store was crowded with big, noisy men in mackinaws. The counters were piled high with groceries that night, beans and coffee and great slabs of bacon and cheese. Cartons and cartons of food were carried off to the logging camps on Saturday night. And when Emily's bedtime came, Grandma sent her upstairs, where she did not have to go, straight to bed, the way she did at home. She sat in Grandpa Morris's chair and read the dictionary with its limp leather cover and its colored illustrations of different breeds of cattle and all the flags in the world. Emily was willing to miss Saturday night at the store if she could go to the Hard Times party, and Mama finally said she could, just this once. Emily listened with great interest when the ladies who came to the library talked about the party. They agreed to gather up all the red and white checked tablecloths in town for the tables, and they would serve baked beans, brown bread, and coleslaw. Just for fun, they would serve coffee from tin cans. This seemed appropriate to Hard Times, and the ladies on the cleanup committee would not have to wash coffee pots. They could throw the cans away. It all sounded like fun to Emily until Mama began to wonder what to wear. Your gray silk, said Emily. What else would Mama wear to a party but her best dress? But this is a Hard Times party, said Mama. We're supposed to wear Hard Times costumes. I thought you knew that. Emily had not known. What are Hard Times costumes? Our oldest and most ragged clothes, Mama explained. Any old thing we can find. Emily was aghast. What for? She demanded. For fun, said Mama. Fun. This was not Emily's idea of fun. Her idea of fun was dressing up in her best dress so that the ladies of Pitchfork would say, Look at Emily Bartlett. Doesn't she look nice in her party dress? No. Emily made up her mind that she was not going to wear any old ragged dress to the party. Never. And so one evening, when Mama got out Daddy's oldest overalls and began to show patches on them, Emily was most disapproving. Mama did not sew on blue denim patches cut from another pair of old overalls. She sewed on pink and yellow and green flowery patches from the gay scraps in the scrap bag. And she did not even sew them over holes. She sewed them any old place. Suddenly Mama put down her sewing, burst out laughing. Emily, I've had the most wonderful idea. I'm going to wash some gunny sacks and cut armholes and a neck hole in for a blouse and make a skirt out of 2 more. And I'll make a belt out of it. Let's see, your father's socks pinned together with safety pins. And for a necklace, what shall I use for a necklace? Emily was too horrified to answer. Mama going to party in a gunny sacks? What a perfectly terrible idea. I know. Mama was delighted with her inspiration. I'll have squash seeds and string them for a necklace. And I'll braid my hair into pigtails and tie them with bows of the twine your father used for sewing gunny sacks. This was getting worse and worse. Mama's beautiful black hair tied with gunny sack twine. This time it was Mama's imagination that was running away with her. And Emily, Mama went on, not even noticing Emily's disapproval, do you know what I think would be terribly funny? Emily was afraid to guess what Mama might think was terribly funny. I think it would be funny if you dressed up in a gunny sack too. Mama was delighted with her idea. I have a feeling we would be the belles of the ball. A terrible feeling of rebellion rose up within Emily. She did not want to be funny. She did not want Mama to be funny. It was not dignified, and grown-ups should always be dignified. And as for being the belles of the ball, to Emily being the belle of the ball meant the time she had heard Mama tell about. It was when she first came out west to teach school, and before she met Daddy. Mama had gone to a dance with the people she boarded with in the little town where she was teaching. She was a new girl in town, and what a whirl she had. All the young men wanted to dance with Mama, but there was one, tall and handsome, and a real gentleman, who danced with her most of all. Mama had a wonderful time that evening. But a few days later, it turned out that that tall, handsome gentleman was a horse thief who had to go to jail. Mama was very sorry to learn this, but she certainly had a story to write to her city cousins back east, who had never danced with horse thieves. All this never would have happened if Mama had worn a gunny sack. We'll find some gunny sacks tomorrow, Mama went on, as if Emily had agreed. And you can wear one of my old stockings for a belt. I won't, said Emily flatly. Won't what? Asked Mama, surprised. Won't wear old gunny sacks to the party, said Emily. And I won't wear any old stocking for a belt either. But Emily, Mama began. Well, I won't, said Emily. I just won't. But Emily, protested Mama, it would be so funny if we both appeared wearing gunny sacks. Emily did not want to cross Mama, but she would not wear a gunny sack to the party. Mama was not the only one in the family who had spunk. Emily, said Mama, if a bee came right along, right now, it would sting your lip. No bee was going to come along in Bartlett's sitting room on a winter evening, but Emily pulled in her lip anyway. But why, Emily? Asked Mama. It was impossible to explain to Mama about what it meant to be the belle of the ball, and that parties were for dressing up and looking beautiful. Because, answered Emily, and had to remember not to let her lips stick out. Then Daddy spoke from the table where he had been going over the bills. Emily, you will wear what your mother tells you to wear, or you will spend the night with your grandparents. When Daddy said something, he meant it. Mama looked thoughtfully at Emily. If she's going to the party, she should have a good time. What do you want to wear, Emily? My red party dress, said Emily promptly. All right, agreed Mama. You brought it here, and I'll baste some old patches on it. Mama still did not understand. But Mama, said Emily, I don't want patches on it. I want to wear it just the way it is. I want to dress up to go to the party. She wanted to be admired, not laughed at.